This is a This is a preschool promise webinar for school districts and education service districts. If you are not a school district or an education service district and you're a different type of entity here with Preschool Promise, know that we are going to be having a separate one specifically for a home base and or for certified centers. So you just can keep that in mind. This is for Preschool Promise school districts and education service districts. We'll go ahead and start with some quick introductions. My name is Dana Young. I'm the Preschool Promise Program Manager here at the division, and I have a couple of colleagues here with me. Michael, you want to go?
Hi, I'm Michael Connor. I work with the Early Learning Division. I help coordinate technical assistance to our ELD-funded preschool programs. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And then Jasmine Rivera.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Rivera. I work with the Early Learning System Initiative. I'm a mentor coach providing mentor coaching support to OPK and Preschool Promise coaches in school districts.
Awesome. Thank you. And then we also have Kelly. Kelly is helping us here do the whole Zoom situation here and showing the presentation, all the stuff. Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Forgive me, I'm trying to find all sorts of different buttons on things and they keep moving, and I have a lot of background noise. My name is Kelly Taylor, pronouns they, them, theirs, and I am the administrative specialist in the program unit. Happy to be here for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And then we also have Crystal Garcia, who is a Preschool Promise Operations and Policy Analyst here for the division. Crystal, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Crystal Garcia. Like Dana mentioned, I'm the Operations and Policy Analyst on Preschool Promise. I support the early learning hubs with Preschool Promise enrollment. And if you have any questions around enrollment, they will typically be routed to me.
Thank you, Crystal. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. Next slide. Alrighty, so our purpose for this webinar is really to talk about our Preschool Promise grant and talk about best practices, resources, and tools. We also are going to go ahead and, if time allows it, we're going to go ahead and give some time at the end for an open Q&A. Really, the goal for us is to go ahead and bring you here and just answer any questions in our mixed delivery. We know that there's questions in like the different groups, right? We have home-based, school districts, education service districts, and then we have our certified centers. And we really wanted to go ahead and do a specific webinar this program years to make sure that we here at the ELD are being responsive to the resources that you're going to need to be super successful with our Preschool Promise grant. As we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, go ahead and type it in the chat message. And then Crystal will go ahead and be kind of keep an eye right there on the questions. And then, like I said, we'll go ahead and allow for some Q&A at the end of the presentation. Next slide. Okay, and you already heard from some of our colleagues here. We have Michael, Jasmine, Crystal, and Kelly here with ELD. Next slide. Right, so our agenda for today, you're going to go ahead and hear from some of us here. I'm going to go ahead and go over some of those program qualities that some of our grantees have questions, especially our school districts and education service districts. We kind of been seeing some trends about you have a big grant manual, you have your grant agreement, you have the playbook. So we wanted to go ahead and just touch base on some of those preschool quality requirements that we're noticing that keep coming up about, is there a waiver available? How do I meet the requirement? What kind of resources are available? And how does it all work? So I'll be spending a little bit of time going over those quality requirements. Michael's going to go ahead and talk about the support available and resources available, including classroom observations. And then Jasmine's going to spend a little bit of time talking about mentor coaching framework and really that coaching system within for Preschool Promise and other programs. Towards the end, we're going to go ahead and get to hear from one of our Preschool Promise grantees. And that is the Salem Kaiser School District. They've been a grantee since 2016. So they're going to go ahead and share their experience with the Preschool Promise grant, share some tips for you all to go ahead and listen there. Next slide. Oh, and the next one. Alrighty, well, let's talk about a little bit just grand scale about our Preschool Promise program and what is it that you're all a part of. Right now, across the state, we have 234 grantees. So as you can see, you're part of a pretty big program. This is made up for, you know, school districts, in-homes, home-based, you name it. We also have like dual funded or triple funded programs. Some of our programs are maybe Relief Nursery, OPK, Baby Promise. Maybe they do some private pay or ERDC. So definitely a mixed delivery. Currently, we, as far as like intent to award what we have across the state in grants, we have 5,344 slots across the state. One thing to go ahead and know is that while we have 234 grantees, we have a lot of sites. We have an estimate of around 343 sites across the state. In some of our non-school districts or educations or ESDs, they're actually in buildings, right? You may have maybe think about like Noni's Village, who's inside the Sheridan School District. So we also have that within a school district, but maybe through a different grantee. Next slide. So what about like how many slots are with school districts and ESDs? We have a total of 50 across the state. Out of the 234, we have about 44 school districts and 6 education districts. A lot of our slots are with you all. There's about 1,697 slots across the state with this type of entities, which makes up 91 sites. Why do I have the little symbol there? It's because many of you are probably, or some of you are still working to go ahead and submit your site report. So go ahead and do a gentle reminder here that if you have not submitted your site report, we really need that data. So then we don't have to add the little symbol there and we have more accurate data there for you all.
And Dana, you didn't tell them, but the quiz on this is open no, right?
Yes, there you go. Thank you. Next slide. Alrighty, so let's talk about some of the Preschool Promise quality requirements that kind of like a little popcorn. They keep coming up about what is it, what do I need to do? That quality requirement is not really helping me here when it comes to implementation. The one that keeps coming up is the quality requirement about the class size of 18 with the ratio 1:9. That keeps coming up for 2 reasons. One is like, hey, but our classroom allows for 20. How can we go up to 20? Does it have to be the 18? So one really good reminder for all of you is that there is a waiver available. If for some reason you want to be able to go from the 18 to the 20, which then that will be a ratio of 1:10 at that point. It's super important, right, with class ratios that, you know, we have the staff in place in there and that we are really just being responsive to any kind of safety and health processes stuff. But this is one that keeps coming up as like, do I have to? And the goal with Preschool Promises is you do. I mean, the vision was for us to go ahead and have like a smaller classroom size, but we also understand the need for like increasing that to 20, which you can do. You will just need to go ahead and submit a waiver for that. So just gentle reminder on that one. If you just realize right now, like, well, I did not know that it was 18 or that it was 1:9, not a problem. Just go ahead and let's get that waiver submitted so then we can go ahead and make note of that. Next slide. Already, another one is toilet training. And that, you know, with every year, I will say probably around October and November, that question keeps coming up. What about kiddos who are still working on that? So our preschool promise quality requirement that speaks to that will be the preschool promise classroom environment must be inclusive of all children, regardless of ability, family composition, culture, language, and family income. So that includes our kiddos who are still developing and still working on that milestone. So we are not able, like with our preschool promise program, we're not able to exclude kiddos, or we're not able to go ahead and ask, for example, like the early learning hub within our program does the eligibility selection and placement. We're not able to go ahead and ask them and say, hey, can you only place kiddos who are potty trained? That's not something they're able to do, and it wouldn't align with our program goals and vision. So if you do need any assistance on how to properly like support kiddos with this milestone, please go ahead and connect with your designated quality specialist at your local CCRNR. Next one. Next slide. Rest time. That keeps coming up as far as like with our preschool promise program, we have a minimum of 6 hours per day. So it's supposed to be no less than 6 hours per day, no less than 4 days a week, and no less than 900 direct service hours for the whole program year. We do know that there are some grantees who are offering a little bit more than the 6 hours. But remember, minimum is 6 hours, which then what do we do about rest time? We know that throughout the day, our little ones need to go ahead and have a little bit of rest. So our requirement on that is preschool promise grantees must provide developmentally appropriate schedules and activities, which includes rest time or alternatives for kiddos not taking a nap. We do know that there's those little ones. I remember my little one that did not like the nap in preschool. And then he went on to elementary and he missed that nap. So just kind of keeping that in mind is that those little ones do need a rest time. And then also one thing that we wanted to go ahead and know is like, well, what's the ratio when the kiddos are sleeping? How is that going to work? So I did put a little reminder here. You probably saw this in our Gov delivery. So what we said is for the purposes of rest time supervision and staff to child ratios, preschool promise we align with the Office of Child Care. So when all children are at rest, the situation permits and the room is arranged so all children are supervised, there may be one teacher or student aide two supervising the kiddos while they're taking their rest time or their nap. Next. Okay, this one, and you know, it's a gentle reminder there. If you have any questions, make sure that you put them on the chat message there. So let's talk about criminal background registry, CBR. All preschool promise staff must go through the CBR. In that requirement that speaks to that is going to be any staff involved in preschool promise must have documentation about completed and satisfactory criminal background check on file with the grantee. We know there's a lot of delays on that, and we know that that poses a lot of challenges for you to be able to start your classrooms, get everybody up and ready. Please go ahead and send us an email to the PSP email if you are having any kind of delays on that. If there's still staff that have not gone through the registry, go ahead and send an email to the PSP at ode.oregon.gov, because we can go ahead and forward that email to our Office of Child Care and see if we can go ahead and expedite it. Sometimes there's ways for us to be able to do that. So if for some reason you're still waiting on that staff that has not gone through the registry, please go ahead and send us an email so we can see if we can expedite the process. Now, one thing that came up that's been coming up is like, but what about transportation? Because of like low staffing, sometimes we're not able to just have like one bus driver, right? That is going to be taking the kiddos to and from school. Like I'll go and use, we had a school district that is like the bus driver changes like from one day to another because of staffing. Like in order for us to go ahead and get all of our like drivers through the CBR, it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to go ahead and take a lot of funding that unfortunately the grant is not able to go ahead and provide. In those cases, what we have added a little disclaimer at the bottom is, let me take a look here. It says that for school district staff for providing transportation, they can, you can go ahead and use your own background check. We know that many of you have your own internal processes and background checks. As long as the parents are notified that the bus driver is not on the ELD's background check. That is not a waiver that you submit to the ELD and say, hey, I'm asking for a waiver for, you know, Michael driver. Yes, I know that is something that you need to go ahead and like notify the parents of the difference. That is like that bus driver is in our own background check and letting them about your processes, but it's not on the ELDs. And as long as they have acknowledged that and they receive that, then that's one way for like the bus driver not to be on the CBR. And like I said, that has been one that, you know, we needed to go ahead and clarify. And like I said, it was really brought up from like some school districts saying there's just no way we're going to be able to take all of our like 50, 100 bus drivers through that, through the registry there. And for the questions that are being asked on the chat, we'll wait maybe at the end of this section on the maybe at the end of the presentation, and then we can go back to those questions. Next slide. Staff qualifications. There's a lot of staffing challenges, not just in our industry, but across many different industries. So we do have some salary requirements and education requirements. The minimum qualifications for a lead teacher is a step A or a CDA, and for the teacher assistant is a step 7. Now we do know that with the staffing issues, one thing that you can go ahead and do is that you can go ahead and submit a waiver for the staff qualification, or in some cases the salary too. We obviously want to go ahead and see the staff move and there's, you know, qualifications and then also in their salaries, but we know that sometimes there are situations where that's just not feasible or you're not able to do that. So we review waivers every Thursday of every week. That's when we review them. We know that we experienced a little bit of delays in previous years, but now we're on a schedule. Every Thursday is when we're reviewing waivers. There may be some waivers that you may submit that may still be pending because of like leadership decisions, but for most of the time, everything, any kind of like waivers or any changes to your program, if you're trying to go ahead and change your slots from one side to the other, or you want to go ahead and change contact information, that also gets reviewed on Thursdays as well. Next slide. And then we often get some questions about like, we have some new staff. Is there any training? Where can I get them up and running with some training? At our ELD website, we have some training available there that is self-paced, the staff can go ahead and do it on their own. Great training. So I went ahead and added some of the titles of that training is for free. You can do it during your own time. We have Foundations for Learning, Prevention is Better Than Treatment, Introduction to Childcare and Safety. So that is here. We just added a link for you to be able to refer as you're getting some new staff. This could be some great training for you available that's free and ready to go and at your own pace. Next slide. Let's talk about Spark. This is another one that keeps coming up. Like, do I have to participate in Spark? Do I have to be at that 4 or 5 star? What does that all mean? All preschool promise grantees are required to participate in Spark. However, there's not a requirement on the star rating anymore. You just have to participate. So that allows you to go ahead and like really work with your QIS, and Michael's going to talk to us a little bit more about SPAR. They're really there for you to go ahead and get up and running. So when you're reading your requirement and you're like, well, do I have to be, how long do I have to be at that 4 or 5 star rated? It's not it's not the star, it's really more the participation. You need to go ahead and get in there with your CCRNR so they can go ahead and start helping you with the process. So that is participating in SPAR, is you scheduling that appointment with your quality specialist, getting a timeline and really start working. The other awesome thing for all of our school districts is that in our Preschool Promise Quality Playbook is really set up and designed that if you are really like following that playbook, it has the quality requirement. It tells you what it looks like in practice. And then at the bottom, it tells you like what domain is that requirement connected in Spark. So you're many of you are actually already participating in Spark because you're already implementing a lot of those practices in your program. So I've added the link here. You're always on every single meeting, you're going to hear me talk about the Preschool Promise Quality Playbook, because it's such a great tool for our grantees to be able to really just see like, what do we mean by what does it mean to be a Preschool Promise grantee, and what does that look like in practice there. With this, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael. So Michael, take it away.
Great. I'm Michael Connor. Again, I work with the Early Learning Division in the Professional Learning Systems team. I help coordinate training and technical assistance to our ELD-funded preschool early learning programs. And that includes helping with the coaching system, helping with other forms of technical assistance. And so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today around supports for implementing quality. So next slide, please. Yep. So we're focused on high quality early learning experiences for kids and families. I wanted to think about with you, 3 or 4 different places where I would look to think about, well, how do we define quality? What do we mean by quality? We can go to the next slide. The first place I think about would be the strategic plan of the Early Learning Division, which is called Raise Up Oregon. Next slide, please. And in Raise Up Oregon, we define high quality in terms of 3 key factors: developmentally appropriate, inclusive, and culturally responsive. So when those are working together, they sketch out, I think, a pretty robust idea about what do we mean by high quality early learning experiences for kids and families. Next slide, please. Developmentally appropriate is a well-established and defined set of ideas about how we recognize the commonality of children, their individuality, and the context that they grow up in. I highlight the definition there. Developmentally appropriate practice involves methods that promote each child's optimal development and learning through a strength-based, play-based approach to joyful, engaged learning. So that's a nice, inspiring statement about what our classrooms and other learning settings want to look like. You're certainly invited to dig into the developmentally appropriate practice position statement and the 4th edition of the accompanying book that NACCE came out with in 2020 for the statement and 22 for the book. The statements and the book are both available in English and Spanish. So we could talk more about that, but that's a key place that we look for. What do we mean in our field, the field of early learning, in terms of high quality, appropriate methods and practices with young children? Next slide, please. Inclusive practices is another important consideration in quality. Dana touched on that. And often when I'm working with quality specialists and coaches thinking about how to respond to grantee questions and concerns and worries and excitements and problems, my job is to help people kind of think about the why. So why do we say that children who are 3 to 5 years old need to be actively supervised by an adult? Well, that's developmentally appropriate. It's not appropriate to send 3 and 5-year-olds down the hall to do stuff on their own. It's not appropriate to expect them to go without a nap or to stay in a particular spot for a long period of time if they don't want a nap. So my job is to help connect with the why, and inclusive practices are a big set of whys. Dana touched on the idea there that in early childhood, we, as a first draft, we say all children belong. We're going to work to change our system and our approaches and our perspectives so that all children feel welcome. And those practices are something that you all likely do, and work with parents, work with each other to make sure that all children feel welcome and that the early learning experience is appropriate for them. So developmentally appropriate, inclusive, and then the next slide, next item that's called out in Raise Up Oregon is around being culturally responsive. That means making sure to learn and understand what's going on with kids and families and incorporate their perspectives, their experiences, their preferences in teaching and learning in our classrooms and other learning settings. So first place I look toward when I think about what do we mean by quality is Raise Up Oregon, developmentally appropriate, inclusive, culturally responsive. But wait, there's more. Next slide, please. As Dana mentioned, all Preschool Promise grantees participate in Spark. And as the boss teaches us, you can't start a fire without a spark. That's just true. It's right in the song, and you can look it up. So Spark standards, there's a lot of them, but children's learning and development is the first one, and that's for a reason. There's lots of descriptions about how high quality learning environments operate, and as Preschool Promise grantees, we align with those Spark domains and standards. Next slide. The quality requirements playbook is another big place. As Dana mentioned, it's aligned with Spark. You can see the table of contents there. This is the tool, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, but this is the primary tool that quality specialists will have on the table as they work with you on improving quality in your program. It's organized in those 4 domains. We even included some stuff around, well, how do we implement in early childhood education to improve quality? So there's some, that last section there is around implementation science. But those domains of activity, I know you all work hard on them. And as you work with your quality specialists, I think the quality playbook can be a place to really come together around, well, what does this mean? How does it connect with Spark? What does it look like in practice? What are we doing that's already strong in this area? How can we build on what we already have? What are some other ideas that we have to improve in this area like that? That's a typical way that quality specialists would work with you on solving problems as you try to improve your program. Next slide. So we've talked quite a bit about quality, and the good news is you're not on your own. We have some supports in place to support you. So I want to talk about 3 key strategies supporting you to implement quality in Preschool Promise. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the quality specialists work at the CCR&R. They are assigned, designated to all Preschool Promise grantees. The Early Learning Division has provided funding for the CCR&Rs to assign quality specialists to each Preschool Promise grantee. And they do a number of things, but the big way we describe what they do is that they consult with leaders at Preschool Promise grantees for the purposes of solving problems to improve the quality of your programs. That's what they're there to do. They focus on quality using the quality playbook. They're experts in problem solving with you. They're particularly curious about your program goals and the problems that are getting in the way of you reaching your program goals. They want to make sure that we're looking at data together. So that's everything from tables of information to stories to your experiences. They also can facilitate professional development, professional learning for your staff. So as you identify with your quality specialists and others on your team, what are the training or education needs of staff, then the quality specialist can help facilitate that. I do want to emphasize they're not supposed to be, and we don't want them to be, experts on your grant requirements. That's really your job, is to be knowledgeable and understanding what you're required to do, what you've agreed to do as part of the grant. Often quality specialists know about that, so it's okay to check in with them, but we don't want them to be spending a lot of time figuring out for you what you're supposed to be doing. We want them to be working alongside you to figure out how to do what you're supposed to do well. I know that's a overlapping requirement, but we're trying to help them be alongside with you, problem solving, identifying resources, identifying activities, thinking about the problem rather than thinking about the requirements, which is something that Dana and her team can help you to make sure you understand through the grant agreement, through the grant manual, what's actually required of the grant versus how do we do it well? How do we do it so that we're meeting our goals? How do we do it so that the kids and families that participate get good stuff from their experience with us? Next slide, please. So the second major strategy, in addition to the quality specialists consult with leaders to improve quality, are coaching. We know that coaching is one of the big ways that teaching teams improve their teaching and learning, improve what's going on with kids in the classroom and other settings. The first thing that we asked you to do in the training and technical assistance coordination agreement that you or somebody on your staff completed with the quality specialist this year, one of the things we asked you was, who's going to do the coaching? Oh, wait, do we have the annotator? Oh, I'm not a boss of this. I'm not a host of this workshop, so I can't fire up the annotator. But on that training and technical assistance coordination agreement that the quality specialist filled out with you or your team, one of the first questions was, who's going to do the coaching? There's a couple options that we have available for you. One is that a coach from the CCR&R can work with your teachers and set up coaching plans with them and meet with them and look at data together and align with the program goals that you've established. So a coach from the CCR&R is one option. Or you might have internal staff that are assigned to do coaching of early childhood educators, including Preschool Promise classrooms. That is your call. You're the right one to decide, do you want to have internal coaches or do you want to have a CCR&R coach? Having said that, there are requirements for professional learning for all coaches who work with Preschool Promise early educators. And those requirements are spelled out in the grant manual on page 14. Anyone who's coaching PSP early educators, the required training includes all the work that ELSI at Oregon State does supporting coaches. So that means meeting with a mentor coach, participating in workshops, participating in tiered coaching certification, and also participating in the monthly community of practice. So we want you to make a choice that's informed, knowing that if you choose internal staff to do coaching, that's great. And we'll need your help getting them connected with the folks at ELSI to participate in this required professional learning. The reason we do this, of course, is that the Early Learning Division, we're responsible to make sure that the coaching for Preschool Promise teachers is done by qualified people who are effective, culturally responsive, inclusive. And the tiered coaching certification is the way that we're making sure that coaches who coach early educators in Preschool Promise and Oregon Pre-Kindergarten and Baby Promise are qualified, effective, culturally responsive, inclusive, like that. So that's the required professional learning for all coaches, regardless of employer. Next slide. Finally, the third strategy I want to talk about, many of you know about this already, but I just want to reinforce it. We have a partnership with the Research Institute at Western Oregon University, Go Wolves, and they are responsible for conducting structured classroom observations in Oregon Pre-Kindergarten Head Start classrooms, as well as Preschool Promise sites. They employ reliable observers. Those observers use one of two tools. One is the class tool published by Teachstone. One is the environmental rating scale. You as the grantee, another choice, it's like toddlers. It's like toddler land. We're maximizing choices as much as we can. You get to select the tool that you would prefer. So if you have a good reason why you want class versus environmental rating scale, that's groovy with us. You tell the observer if you're contacted to have that observation, we'd prefer to use the class or we'd prefer the environmental rating scale, like that. And also, if you've got a particular conflict with the date, so they say, hey, our our date to observe is February 14th, and you say, we've got an all-school Valentine's Day dance, including the preschool. I know I made that up, but if you've got a date conflict, just talk to your observer and you can adjust that. That's not a big deal. This is a multi-year project that we're engaging on. Our preference is to do fall and spring observations. You could see how having an observation in the fall and then responding to it and thinking about it and doing some cool stuff to make things better, and then getting an observation in the spring and seeing what ways you improved or not. That would be the preferred way to do it. We don't yet have the funding for that, but that's our goal, is to be able to provide that for you. I just want to highlight on the right side of the slide there, who's doing what. The TRI is observing, they're analyzing the observations that they do. They prepare a report. It goes to you and the quality specialist. And then you have a chance, you and your team, to review those results with the quality specialist, to think about, what's working, what's not, what do we want to tackle, build on, like that. Coaches will review those reports with teaching teams to think about, okay, the program is saying we really want to work on this and that. How do we want to do that in this classroom? What strengths do we want to build on? What areas do we want to tackle that might be challenges for us? And then also last, ELD reviews those. If the observer notes a health and safety concern, part of our responsibility is to review those and think, oh, okay, do we need to follow up with the grantee? Do we need to talk more about what happened or what's going on, like that? So that's kind of who's doing what on those structured classroom observations. Next slide. That's the end of my talk, but I'll catch up with some of the questions at the end, but I want to turn it over to Jasmine at ELSI at Oregon State. Go Beavs.
Go Beavs. Woo woo. So I'm here to talk about mentor coaching supports that are available to those providing coaching in state-funded preschool programs. And so Michael mentioned high quality preschool and continuous quality improvement. So I want to touch on 3 supports that our coaching core at ELSI has to offer, so that in turn, these coaches we can wait a second. Thank you. Support preschool educators to reach their goal of high quality state funded preschools. So the 3 supports that I'm going to be talking about are our Oregon coaching competencies, our tiered certification system, and our mentor coaching framework. Thank you. So after about a year of development with system partners, ELSI has launched these Oregon coaching competencies. They were released this past summer. And so we have 6 coaching competencies that reflect high quality, effective skills and practices that coaches supporting coachees should exemplify in this tiered coaching certification system in Oregon. And they are deeply rooted in practice-based coaching. So I don't know if you can read that, but I'll go ahead and read the 6 competencies. They are to use strategies to support culturally responsive coaching, use strategies to build collaborative partnerships, apply adult learning principles, use data to develop coaching goals, observe, provide feedback, and facilitate goal-focused reflection on effective practice, and coaching for high quality. And this really ties in nicely with what Michael was just talking about. Coaching for high quality, developmentally appropriate, inclusive, culturally responsive, trauma-informed, and linguistically appropriate teaching practices. So each of these 6 competencies begins with a short description, and it's followed by a list of characteristics to illustrate that description. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat right now if you want to check out these coaching competencies. And so they can be found on our ELSI website, and they're available in English, Spanish, traditional Chinese, Russian, and Vietnamese. And so this is going to come into play with our tiered certification system. Next slide, please. Thank you. So previously, there hasn't been a statewide system to support coaches in a streamlined way. So ELSI, along with other system partners, are building this tiered certification system. that in combination with the coaching competencies that I just mentioned is meant to provide equitable professional pathways for coaches. And it aims to support the professional development of coaches and those interested in becoming coaches. So as you can see in the graphic at tier 1, the focus is on developing an understanding of what coaching is and building that foundational knowledge. So this tier is really intended for the ECE professional who may be interested in becoming a coach. So after certification, they would be knowledgeable and qualified to apply for a coaching position. And note that they would need to be a step 9 in Oro. And so tier 1 is an online self-paced course that can be completed in about 8 hours. During this course, participants learn about practice-based coaching as well as the Oregon coaching competencies. Currently, it's being piloted with some coaches in Preschool Promise and OPK programs. The plan is to go ahead and launch this more widely this spring 2023. So looking at tier 2 is meant for current coaches in the field. And so in this tier, they're able to demonstrate and apply characteristics and skills that are described in the Oregon coaching competencies. Tier 2 is still in development, and it will include training in practice-based coaching and support with an ELSI mentor coach to develop those characteristics and skills that are described in the Oregon coaching competencies. There is Oro credit that will be given as well. And then tier 3, as you can see, is a mentor coach level. And so at this level, mentor coaches would be able to demonstrate expertise as a coach. So they would be able to mentor, train, and teach others. And this tier is also currently in development. Next slide, please. So, excuse me. This is the area I feel like is really the kind of like the protein of what happens in the mentor coaching relationship. So currently I work with coaches to really engage as a thought partner and work alongside coaches to really promote growth in their skills and abilities as a coach so that they in turn can promote that growth within the educators they work with. So we really work on building collaborative partnerships that are relationship focused while working towards transformational coaching that includes these process goals that you see here. And that's being anti-racist and working with an equity lens, being trauma informed and nurturing resilience, being strength-based when reflecting and conversing with coaches. So there's 5 key components that we engage in working with coaches. And so one of those being reflective dialogue, which really is embedded in all of the other components. This is at the forefront when we're having one-to-one meetings, when we're having communities of practice. During one-to-one meetings, we work on professional development goals for coaches. And now that we've launched our Oregon coaching competencies, we're using those to create SMART goals. We're using the Coaching Companion platform to track these SMART goals. We also provide facilitated workshops and training. And so we've been developing some practice-based coaching opportunities for professional development. We're currently working on a workshop for adult principles of adult learning. So we offer those opportunities. Also working with data-informed goals and practices. So we're modeling using data to create goals. As part of our tier 1 course, we offer the opportunity for a self-assessment so that coaches can self-assess with the coaching competencies, and then coaches can work with a mentor coach like myself to see areas that they want to work with and create some goals that are data-informed. And lastly, we offer communities of practice. As Michael mentioned earlier, these are offered once a month. This is a great time for coaches to collaborate with one another, talk about problems of practice. Sometimes we have themes, ongoing themes. Right now, we're currently working with data dialogues. And then once in a while, we also introduce resources such as a coaching guidebook that we launched maybe a year ago now, I forgot. And so I would encourage you, like Michael mentioned, to talk to your quality specialist and decide who will be doing the coaching. If you have internal coaches that will be doing that, then the quality specialist will get that information to us, and then I can start connecting with those coaches and start engaging in these coaching pathways with your coaches. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next slide. I'm looking at our time and I want to be super respectful of our time. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to one of our grantees, which is the Salem-Keizer School District. As I mentioned earlier, they have been with Preschool Promise since 2016. So they were one of our very first Preschool Promise grantees. I had the chance to go ahead and work with them at the hub level and then here at the state. So we're really pleased with our partnership there. They currently have 141 Preschool Promise slots, and those are, they have a total of 8 sites and they provide transportation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephanie Wetzel, and we can stop sharing the screen and ensure that we can see our faces. And then she'll go ahead and just talk to us a little bit about her journey here with Preschool Promise, what has gone well, any tips. So take it away, Stephanie.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Dana asked if I could just come on and share just a few things about kind of my experience here. So I'll just tell you a little bit about our program and myself. So I started with Salem-Keizer School District in 1997. So, but I began working with our pre-K programs in 2005. When I started here, we were OPK only, and we're serving about 120 students in 6 classrooms. Now we have about 700 students. We have OPK where we're doing a Head Start. We're state funded only, so we don't receive federal Head Start. We have Preschool Promise. We also have a program funded through our Title I funds, Title Pre-K, and we have our Teen Parent Early Childhood Center. So super exciting. A couple of my tips that I would just recommend is really learning from everyone else is really how I've learned the most. I know when we were starting full day in Preschool Promise, I reached out to some of the experts who've been doing it a while. So I went and visited OCDC's full day and went and visited Woodburn School District and really got lots of ideas there. So, I would just say, I'll put my email and contact info in the chat, and you're all more than welcome. Please reach out. I'm happy to, whatever I can do to help, I'm happy to do that. And also Dana and Michael are awesome. So using our expertise here at the state as well is another tip I would recommend. I think being a pre-K grantee in a school district has lots of benefits. So I tell folks there's challenges, right? But there's also benefits. So working in where we have a system in place for human resources, for technology, for facilities and food services and nursing and all of those things being built into a school district is really great and a great benefit that we have. I feel like we can do a better job transitioning families from our pre-K straight into kindergarten, being here internal within our school district. So that's been a great benefit for us. I would say kind of that kinder placement, getting supports, I think has been with families who are needing kind of wraparound services, being in a school district has made that a little bit easier. What I tell folks is just since COVID, I think probably over the last 3 years, we've seen kids' needs continue to change. right? So we're getting more complex kids who are coming in without supports in place. We've had a lot of talk about toileting in our program and helping kids and staff figure out how to do toileting support in a way that we're following all of our district policies, in a way that we're inclusive and supportive and supporting kids and families developmentally. So if you need any help with toileting, we've got lots of great ideas for that. We have had to, over the last 3 years, also increase supports for social, emotional, and behavior with our program, just with the needs changing of kids and staff. So we have a mental health, early childhood mental health supports that we're providing. And then we also, this year, I have a full-time behavior specialist just for our pre-K programs. Now I have multiple programs, so I split the funding and do it across multiple things, but that has been just a game changer for me, because last year I was writing a lot of safety plans, support plans, individual student schedules, a lot of those pieces. So now I have some help with that. Let's see, trainings, we work within, we have lots of, we use our own instructional coaches, but then we also have different trainings and supports that we do. We have our equity training set up for tomorrow, so we're excited about that. Understanding bias, and that is for tomorrow. I think some of the challenges being a school district in our state-funded pre-K internally, sometimes we get multiple sets of rules that sometimes can conflict with each other, right? So I just had a visit from, who are the people that come out from Western, that come out for the state visits, and they just came out to one of our sites that's in an elementary school and has elementary playground, right? So we had a big discussion on play equipment and our 3 and 4 year olds on some of the equipment there, and so that's kind of an issue. I tell all of our staff, they get really confused about doing multiple background checks. Right. So I do a background check for the school district, and then I have to do another background check through CBR, and that's very confusing. And I'll tell you, like, I had one person who was with our program, didn't change jobs, right? She stayed with our early childhood program, and she had to do 3 fingerprintings all within the same department, one for TSPC, one for Salem Kaiser School District, and then one for CBR. Very silly. That's the challenge of being a school district and following all the preschool promise rules. I think that's all I had on my list, Dana.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it, Stephanie. I think you really capture everything there. And we still have a little bit of time, so we're going to go ahead and ask some questions. And if it's okay, Stephanie, for some reason someone wants to ask you a question here, we'll just have them ask.
Yeah, please do.
That works. Already, I only skimmed through some of the questions there, but Crystal, you want to go ahead and give us a couple questions?
Yeah, sorry, my voice is a little raspy. I'm not feeling too well today. We had a question from someone that says, is there a template available for that parent letter communication regarding CBRs?
Great question. Unfortunately, here at ELD, we don't have that question because we really see them more as school district and family communication. It's kind of like we're kind of in the back. I don't want to put them like on the spot, but the school district that I know that is implementing something similar to that will be the Beaverton School District. So maybe connecting with other school districts, but unfortunately that's not something like that we have like a template or a letter, and it's not a waiver that you will put through ELD. This is more you and the parents there. Go ahead, Crystal.
Then we had just a general question if they would be getting a copy of the slides presented today.
Absolutely. You're going to go ahead and get all the slides, and you'll also get the recording as well. And then, friendly reminder, we're still going to have our big preschool promise provider grantee meeting in February. So stay tuned for that, because we'll be talking about fiscal stuff and next program year. But yes, you'll be getting everything from this meeting. Go ahead.
And then I know that Michael answered some questions, so I don't know if he answered this one about the Spark. Is C2Q demonstrating participation
Yes, great question. That is demonstrating participation because you're starting the process in there. So C2Q is fine. And then if you notice on your site report, we always ask like, hey, what's your spot rating? Because we're seeing kind of like the progress, right? So please continue working with your QIS there.
Mhm. Okay, and then oh, there's also a question about can the 900 hours be discussed in a future meeting? And I don't know if we talked about this in our meeting today, but maybe just a topic of conversation for future meetings.
Absolutely. Yes, we can definitely do that. I want to be super respectful over time. I think like that there's something that you can take away from this meeting, a couple things like connect with your fellow preschool promise school district and ESD's grantees. We've had a couple meetings where people are connecting and visiting each other, right? Just kind of going back to what Stephanie said, like really you're doing the work. How do you do it? Give us some tips. So we really hope that you continue to do that because I've seen that start like at another meeting, which that leads to our office hours. We know that preschool promise can be very challenging. Like, as Stephanie says, like, hey, something's really confusing. Like we are not sure which requirement is which. We really hope that this presentation kind of like sets us all like just kind of even things out about some of the stuff that have come up, but we do have office hours on the second Tuesday of every month for all of our preschool promise grantees. Just go ahead and make sure you register. They're available at 10 a.m. and then 3 p.m. So those 2 times, second Tuesday of every month. And then you also have the option of requesting an individual meeting. If you're like, hey, I really need to go ahead and talk to either myself or maybe you have a question for a grant manager as far as like any kind of finances or budgeting, they are available to do that. There was a question there about like transportation in reimbursement for mileage for families. So I have gone ahead and sent that question to our grants team to go ahead and provide some clarification as far as like, are they referring to like the transportation enhancement or suggested regular funds? And then what can we do to go ahead and support families? Because that could also fall under inclusionary practices as far as making sure the families come to preschool. Just like I said, you have the office hours, you can schedule an individual meeting, you can send us an email as well. You have a lot of resources locally. We do with our preschool promise funding, as I mentioned, we fund some of the positions there with our local childcare research and referral. We have our coach, we have a quality specialist, and then we also have our hubs who are tasked with the recruitment, eligibility, selection, and placement as well. Crystal works directly with our hubs. So if anything comes up or you have any questions, just go ahead and let us know. We'll go ahead and look through the chat, and if there was any questions that we were not able to answer, we'll go ahead and follow up when we send you the email with that meeting invite and materials. I will go ahead and follow up on the CBR as well. I noticed someone put a comment there about what about other positions? Like what does that mean? The guidance that I gave today was only for transportation and the transportation drivers, but I'm going to go ahead and follow up to make sure that we send back out like information that talks about other positions as well. But at this time, Crystal, unless you see a question there that we can answer real quick.
Looks like we just had a question about the waiver links. I'm just in process of putting the link to our SharePoint site for that.
Please, yes, we do have waivers available. And then don't forget that we have our preschool promise update and change form. Any changes you want to do to your grant, whether it's like a name, contact information slot, we are moving away from the email. And like I said, those need to be submitted through our preschool promise update and change form. So we'll go ahead and make sure to include those links when we send out the email for all that, all the information here. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining our meeting. We really appreciate it. Have a good evening. Thank you for your partnership.